ramifications of it are what I think are really extraordinary. And think about this, George. If you and I or someone else are telepathic, that means that my consciousness and your consciousness somehow interact.
Right.
You know, they touch in some way, so they intermix. Now, that doesn't just mean that they exist at the same place or something. You know, they coincide over. It has to mean more. It has to mean that they penetrate one another, or they, have some kind of interplay that is more than just being at the same place. So they have something very strongly to do with one another. So it has to be the case that the consciousnesses become one another. Because, for example, if consciousnesses interact by just coinciding, that just means they're at the same place. So you have to become more than just at the same place to have telepathy be the case. But what does it mean to be more than just coinciding in space? It means that you have to become identical in some way. You know, the things have to mix in such a way that they're not necessarily distinct. So telepathy, by its very nature, has to be a philosophy where people are not distinct, okay? I mean, you can get little signals of this when I used to do telementation. If I had a big telementation session, I did it all morning. It varies. Sometimes I won't want to do it much one day, and the next day I'll just do meditation, the next day telementation, whatever. But I'll notice if I have really strong meditation times, I can go around. We used to have a little market. I used to live in Indiana, and I would just go walk around there in a certain kind of ecstatic meditational state. And I could watch people coming into the store with a certain expression on their face. And then if they would walk around the store, when they came in my proximity, their expression would change. And I would do this over and over, this experiment. I walked around Walmart doing this, trying to see if it would work, and people would start, just for some reason, just all of a sudden burst out in like a happy expression or something. And I was
We need more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know you've got people on your show, Dr. Dyer and so forth, talking about this happening. This is what society is supposed to be like. A lot of people say, "Oh, Jeff, that's a dreamer's attitude." I say, "Oh, really? Is it?" Then tell me why the American Indians, or not even just them. So many primitive cultures. The Penan in Borneo is a great example. Penan. I mean, that group is a huge population of people, and there was a book called Stranger in the Forest written about them in the 1970s, and an explorer went in there and found out they don't even really have a word in their language for rape, George, and nobody can remember it happening. This is how people are supposed to live. We're so on the wrong beam in civilization, and if you tell someone this, let's say, "Oh, you're an idealist. Oh, you're a dreamer. You can't have peace. You can't have, all this, love and togetherness. You're just a hippie." And I say, no, it's empirical that's how we're supposed to be. Interfractality is what I call all that telepathy we were just talking about. I mean, my consciousness goes beyond me. It goes into you. It goes into my neighbors. And theirs into me. I mean, there's the old magicians they would have the saying, "As above, so below," but there's another one they had, "As without, so within." I mean, my consciousness is going out there, and theirs is coming in here. The inside is the outside. To distinguish the two, that's what's called the ego consciousness, where you think that there's just this matter and it's different from me, and I'm just closed up here in my body and separate from all the matter around me. No, that's all false. And just a little bit of meditation shows that to be false. What we are beings filled with love that's supposed to interpenetrate each other.
Why is it that the ancients, the mystics, the shamans understood how to tap into this force, this field, but modern humans really don't?
Wow. We could right away if we wanted to, but why we don't, part of me thinks in my book, The Telescreen, we're all infected. I mean, that's what half that book is about, how we're supposed to be one way, but we're this other way. We're ego consciousness humans, which are spiteful and angry and petty towards each other, but we're supposed to be like the American Indian shaman who's feeling the Great Spirit and sharing it telepathically with his comrades. So, part of me thinks we're, separation from nature. If I go to the forest, George, with my daughters, because I mean, there's forests all around here. I go walking around with them all the time and so forth. I mean, if I'm watching my feelings, rather than just on autopilot and thinking about this and that, but if I instead a little more carefully exist and watch myself, I notice my feelings dramatically change. It's all of a sudden, George, like I'm communicating at a feeling level with all the trees around and the water, and it's like a totally different state of consciousness just kind of emerged just by my existing in the forest there. And I know my daughters are happier, and they're running around playing. And everything is, it's almost like our view of nature of tooth and claw. That exists, obviously. That's empirical, but it's almost like there's a higher order to things, which our minds are just kind of made for, and perhaps just that separation from nature, and then into the telescreen world we go. Maybe that's why, because it does seem, if you look at an American Indian culture or other primitive cultures, it's not this 1 in 25,000 people becomes the mystic. Mystic being someone who sort of has direct awareness
Sure.
and experience of the intelligence behind everything. It was like every other person, or every 10 people. The tribe has 25 people and there's 2 shamans, and they've got the real information. So maybe that's a big part of it, that we're really what we are made for. I mean, there's an intelligently designed cosmos with golden ratio structures all over, and we are mathematical beings. I mean, there's all these symbiotic types of correlations between us and the natural world. So how much of a disaster could it be for us to completely take us out of that world and put us into the telescreen world?
What are they teaching in the realm of philosophy these days?
Oh wow, yeah, philosophy. I always I'm a little bit hard on academics, but philosophy and physics and anthropology I always have sort of kept from that, and I really like those fields. Philosophy I've published quite a bit in the field, academic articles and good journals and so forth, and it is all over the place, George. There's a heavy influx of Eastern philosophy, and that's actually my specialty, has been Buddhism and physics. But really, to say they're teaching one thing is you can't. They're everywhere, and it's really productive. I mean, you've got basically everybody in the realm of philosophy is trying to attack everybody else and attack everybody else's theories, and it leads to this incredible proliferation of amazing literature. And I don't know, I just developed a great admiration for the field, being in it, seeing all this work and all this productivity. Philosophers are good skeptics, George. I mean, that's something that everybody needs a little more of, to say the least.
But they're also enlightening, aren't they?
Yeah, no, skeptic in the positive sense. I mean, they need reasons to believe things. Philosophers are good at that, and therefore, I mean, think about it. What if something is if you have skepticism applied to something and you tear it down, what's left? What is left is what we might be able to call truth, or the closest thing possibly to truth, or things that we know. So skepticism is very productive. So yes, they're enlightening because they, in a lot of ways, won't believe a lot of what the rest of the people will. I remember back before we invaded Iraq in 2003, a lot of philosophers would sort of get in their office and talk among themselves and say, what George Bush said last night on TV is what we teach in our class is a logical fallacy. Or, hey, where's all the evidence? Everybody's sort of in this frenzy of, mental frenzy of, war fever, but we don't see the evidence that Bush said he promised for the WMDs. And then, of course, a year later, everybody started to think, hey, yeah, we didn't, but, it was a little too late. So, but anyways, philosophers, they're a fun group, and they're leaning more towards New Age theories and Eastern religion and so forth, which is probably a good idea because we've had 1,000 years of sort of Eastern religion not being present in our philosophies. Which, to get a correct picture of reality, you need those in there in addition to Western religion.
I think so too. Is this world changing so fast that we're losing control of it?
I don't know, George. I don't think so. I'm really optimistic about the future. More and more these days. Back, maybe the early 2000s, I was pretty scared about 9/11. I always thought 9/11 was an inside job from maybe just 2 years after it happened. And that really freaked me out quite a bit. But more and more in the last 5 years, I'm more and more optimistic. And I see lots of good changes. I've got a specific reason why as well. I think, George, I don't want to make predictions. Predictions are not a good idea because they just always turn out wrong. But it seems to me to be that we're having a world where, to some degree, the people are going to start taking over things again. We're going to take over industries. There's a medical marijuana revolution brewing. Well, that could be a people-run industry. So far it is. I hope that stays that way. I mean, a lot of the corporations are getting out of America, and, hopefully they don't, if they're harming people, they don't do the same in other countries. But, just speaking about us alone, well, hey, maybe we've got a space now to create people-powered industries that really help people rather than hurt people with, low pay and all the other, poisonous chemicals and aspartame and all these things that big corporations are responsible for. I have a specific
Rumsfeld again, by the way, with aspartame.
Yeah. That
he's everywhere.
Yeah, he sure is. There's so many things going through my mind right now. Well, let me just finish that one thought. I think that the reason that things could be possibly changing, and it could be surrounded by 2012, is because of numerology. Now, I know a lot of people don't
Explain that.
Okay, yeah, a lot of people I know don't like numerology, and that's fine, but one thing I can say with absolute confidence...
You're not a numerologist now, are you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, you are?
Tremendously, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if anybody just picks up a book on numerology. See, with astrology, you can't do this. Astrology, you really kind of got to find the good books, or else the ones that aren't so good will deceive you, or it's hard to figure out what's going on in them. Numerology is not quite that way. There's so many good books all over. I can almost just say, go just pick one up and start reading about your numerological code. It works.
You know our numbers lady, don't you, Glynis McCants?
Yeah, I listen to her all the time, yeah.
Good girl.
Yeah, absolutely. You're just shocked to find how accurate numerology is in describing your life. You will even learn things. I never thought of myself like that. Yeah, that is going on in my life. I never noticed it until I read the numerology. It's like numerology is this incredible, lofty science. It makes you think of, that verse, John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word. Maybe, Logos in the Bible. It makes you think that, this mathematical intelligence that Plato was talking about is like some divine numerologist or something. But the point is here is we just changed our years. We went from the 1817s, 1900s, all that. Everything's got a 1 and some digit. Now we're in the 2000s, and numerologists, I can go pull books off my shelf here that will say, when you have something like this happen, the numerologists say, get ready for everything to change in some way. Okay, when you have because all of the children being born from 2000 on, including my 3 children, are going to be in some way pretty different than they were, and the people existing before that, they'll change as well, but not as dramatically as the children being born. So if that's true, and if numerology is as hardcore of a science as I just described, we can expect something big coming, and all these children getting to the age of, the first one's born getting to the age of 12, we can expect, the next 40 years to involve some new direction on planet Earth. And the number 2 would suggest, I like individualism, George. I don't want to bash it. The Founding Fathers really stress individualism and so forth. But it has its problems. And the number 2 in our year numbers would suggest now that we're entering a time of dramatic camaraderie and even communalism in a way. Now, we don't want to have an Illuminati world system use that against us and implant communitarianism in us. And, hopefully they didn't put that there beforehand to trick us, to get us to fall into it, if you know what I'm saying. But this could be a dramatic improvement for humanity, and I think I'm kind of seeing it around a little bit. So that's my real reason for being so optimistic about the future. But there's other reasons I can see things going on in reality. People are waking up more. You got your show, George, which is a huge show. I mean, you're waking up everybody. There's Alex Jones' show so big now. There's lots of other little radio shows.
They can't sleep anymore. We're waking them up so much, huh?
Yeah, I mean, you can't deny there's huge changes all over the place.
Absolutely. Where do you get your books, by the way, Jeff?
Best place is Amazon. I sell them at my website. I've got 2 websites, antimatterradio.com and zenflowerradio.com. But Amazon's quickest. They're a little cheaper on my sites, and all 3 of them are there.
All right, we're going to come back and take phone calls with you next. Final hour with Jeff Grubb on Coast to Coast AM.